So here at Wake Up, Catalyzing Consciousness, we're continuing our conversation with Victor Sims, who is a developer of technology that incorporates consciousness. So, Victor, can you describe for me one or two of the more unusual experiences that you've had around this concept of consciousness, or your own consciousness? We should make it more personal to you.
Yeah, in the early 90s, I did an NLP course, Neuro-Linguistic Programming course, at our local hospital in the graduate centre there. And the course was for about 18 months, and we turned up every month, for the weekend or one day of the weekend. And one particular time we were doing the walking the timelines, which is an absolutely fantastic technique for trying to predict your future, and if you make a decision, how that future is going to roll out in terms of real time. And the way you do this is you'd have these cards. It's a standard process. I mean,
so this is a standard sort of workshop process.
It's standard, yeah, and it's called walking the timelines. Walking the timelines. So you would cut a piece of card out that represented the now moment. You cut another piece of card out and say that was 3 months, and then 6 months, and 9 months, or a year, or 2 years, or whatever time base you wanted. You lay them out on the floor. Unfortunately, in this particular centre, it was like a big hall, and we had probably about 30 people. So there was like 15. We pair up. There was about 15 groups, and the idea is that the person who's having the experience would close their eyes. The guide would move you to the first square. You would pose a question. So that would be like, shall I change my job? Or I've got this opportunity to change my job. I'm thinking of taking it. I'm not quite sure how it's going to go, etc., etc. So you could pose a question like that, and then you'll be guided to the. So you're on the starting square. You guided to the next square, 3 months, and then you ask that question and see what your body feels like. 'Cause it's a real experience. It's a visceral experience of how your body might be. Is it excited? Has it got a tummy upset because you're feeling anxious or sick, or do you feel good about it? What's your mood? All the rest of it. And so it's a very powerful process. So you could be walking along. You think 3 months. And you've got your eyes closed, you think, yeah, that's great. 6 months, yeah, not too bad. A year, oh, right, I feel fantastic. I'm happy. I can feel myself celebrating, etc., etc. And conversely, it can be, I'm just about to make this decision. I move to 3 months, and it's like, oh, this doesn't feel good. I moved to 6 months. Oh God, I feel sick in my tummy, and I'm. This is not good. You move to a year, definitely the wrong. That was definitely the wrong solution. I'm definitely not going to make that decision like that. So it's a way of feeling what your body's going to potentially be like in that time. So that was great. Anyway, this particular exercise we were doing it for quite a few hours. And after a while, we didn't use we're not guided by a partner. They would go off and do their own thing. And we still had the pieces of paper on the floor. And we sort of do it on our own, because we just wanted to keep practicing. And so I was walking, I posed a question, standing on the first now moment, and then I started walking along the timeline. I don't know how far I got along it, and I think I even wandered off the timeline, because your eyes are closed when you're walking, you just sort of point yourself in that direction, and you go. But I actually think I must have walked off the timeline, physically that is. And to my total amazement, I burst into, I was still with my eyes closed, I burst into this room, and there were people...
So burst into, like, through the wall burst into?
No, it's just in the middle of the hall that we're in, but because my eyes were closed, I had a visual experience of bursting through a wall into what was, I can only describe as a breakout room, where people in... mostly in white coats, some standing, some sitting. I think I even remember seeing a guy with a coffee cup. Like they were sitting at the table, lounging around, having a cup of coffee, and I broke through the wall. And they said, "You get back on your timeline. You're not supposed to be here." And it's like, what? So that immediately shot me back into the room. I might have been daydreaming as well at the time. I moved off the line because we've been doing it for some time, and we were kind of probably a bit bored by this point. So I was thrown back into the room, and I immediately went to tell the facilitator about this experience, and that was very, very strange. But it was also it stuck with me for all these years, because this was back in 1990.
What was the facilitator's response? Did he have any response to this, or she?
No, it was he, Jonathan, and he was just, well, that's amazing. Nothing more than that's an interesting experience. But that wasn't the only experience I had from that moment onwards. Another experience, which I've had many experiences of the same thing, is I could wake up in the morning, and there's a particular state of being that I can get into. It's when I'm just waking up, and I'm just waking up. I'm aware that I'm just about to wake up, and I open my eyes, but I try not to engage in anything in the room. And to my absolute amazement, I saw everything not as a wall or a door or whatever was there, but just line drawings, like it were on a 3D CAD, before it's rendered. It's just all these line drawings. And I've seen that a number of different times, not just at home, but in other places. And it's like, wow, I can see this is unrendered drawing. And I thought, well, that's interesting. How does that work?
So unrendered reality.
Unrendered, yeah.
Interesting.
And it's fascinating, and sometimes I'm just there in amazement, because what can I see? Oh, that's the bathroom. That's the bath, and that's the door, and that's oh crap. It's just absolutely amazing. Anyway, so there's a couple of experiences.
Essentially, you're in the hypnagogic state when you're actually experiencing this.
Yeah, it's a good meditational space as well. I like that as a meditational space. Actually, that's my time for meditation when I'm completely rested, but I haven't really engaged back into the world, and I just hold myself in that space because I enjoy that space as a meditation space.
Are you a lucid dreamer?
Yes, sometimes. Yes, not all the time, but I do have dreams, and I am in the dreams sometimes, and I know that I'm in the dream.
So how does this compare to, for example, a lucid dream, this experience of waking up to see this outline of reality?
Totally different, because I am already in the reality that I know. I'm already in this whatever reality this is.
Right.
I'm in this reality.
This physical...
and they're things that I recognise, except they're not rendered at this point.
Right. Interesting.
So however our brain renders stuff, we obviously get an imprint on our visual cortex, and somehow the brain, fills everything in, which I think is how the brain's supposed to work anyway.
Right.
It gets 1% information and adds 99% of memory and coloration to it. So I think this is prior to it being rendered. I find it fascinating. I've done it several times.
I find your experience fascinating also. So I appreciate your sharing your experience with us. I'm interested in the guys in white coats, because I've also had the experience in what I characterize as my dream world of finding myself in a reality that was galactic, but almost a construct that was organic. It was like an organic film around me, which was torn, and I could look out into this whole fabric of reality. And then I found myself sitting on a sort of stainless steel table in an examination room, and some sort of lab technician in white coat came into the room and started to ask me about my dream. And I started to describe it and what I had seen outside the tear. And I had the realization that as I was describing it, it was being erased from my memory. And I sort of pushed him to the side and I said, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And I walked out of the space and woke up when I walked out. So there's some interesting parallels to your room with the technicians and the coffee.
I think there's a movie also called The Adjustment Bureau. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you having a look. It's a comedy. It's a romantic comedy as well, but it's also there's some, you know, the way they've done it is, I won't spoil it for those who haven't seen it, but it's there is another team which are not in white coats, but they're in, they have a certain type of attire that they wear, and they work outside of time, and they can freeze time and correct things. And then they press a button, you know, then everything continues on, but with an adjustment made. And it's quite interesting, fascinating. And I wondered, you know, where people get inspiration for this sort of movie, because they're blockbuster movies, and they take a lot of money to create these movies on an idea.
And they must be having resonance with people.
Exactly, yeah.
So if you've had an experience like this, you know, share it in the comments here. You know, we're interested in hearing your experience as well. Have you had this experience of the stopping of time standing still?
Yes, I have. Yes, I've had it twice, actually, in my life. And I could probably not describe one of them, only because... you know, it was a sacred experience, but it involved going into the. Our son asked us. My partner and I were going to Egypt, and our son asked us to put a crystal in one of the pyramids. It was very specific which one, and he said it's got to go in there. And of course, if you've been to the pyramids, you know there's guards there, and there's no way you can do anything.
And this crystal was particular. It was
just one of a crystal cluster which just had 3 points.
So he wanted what? So the part that you would
one of the points broke off.
Of it.
I think it was the middle one. The middle one broke off, and he specifically said, you know, that in his meditation he wanted to put this crystal, this part, which was quite large, that sort of size, into the middle pyramid. So when Sharon and I got to the Giza Plateau and we looked at the middle pyramid, we thought, and it was open, and we thought, right, not quite sure how we're going to do that.
Interesting.
And we went in the pyramid, and you know, around all the walkways, there's sort of wooden slatted things with ropes, and basically you can't go anywhere.
You certainly can't put anything there that's going to remain there.
No, to remain there, because if you put anything anywhere, you know, they sweep through it, take all the bits out that you've stashed in there, and then probably flog them on the local Cairo market. However, right at this, we were standing there thinking, that would be an ideal place to put this, because, you know, nobody's going to move this gigantic 30-ton boulder. We're just going to put it at the back. But unfortunately, the boulder was about at least 6 or 8 feet high. And anyway, so I decided to clamber up on this boulder, clamber up on the boulder literally, but, you know, literally clamber up like this and put this crystal just behind the top of the boulder, which was in a sort of a corner of a room. And that's what I was planning to do. And we were contemplating this. And
you and your wife were...
we were just sort of standing there, just admiring it, you know, like this, was people whizzing by and, you know, guards wandering up and down, all the rest of it. And there was this moment where we looked at each other and we thought, this is the moment. And there were still people around, just gone by, and, you know, they were like still in sight. If you looked left and right, they were still in sight. And so there was this moment, then everything became still. All right, we looked at each other and thought, right, this is the moment. So I clambered over the barrier, up and put this crystal behind the rock, you know, and it came back again. Then everything carried on.
Oh, interesting.
And we thought, wow, how do we get away with that? This is amazing.
So your perception is actually time paused for a moment.
It paused.
Because there were no guards running up there to pull you down.
Or anybody.
Yeah.
You know, and yet we're in the middle of a crowded, busy thoroughfare. Yeah. You know, and me to actually get up on the boulder wasn't the 2-second job.
And you both perceived this moment.
Yes, we did. Yeah. And when we got back again, it all went carried on, you know. That was the first time. Another time was when we were, I was with a friend coming back from London, and we were kind of really done in for the day. You know, it was quite late at night. It was about 10 o'clock at night, I think it was. And coming back from London down to Somerset, where we used to live, and we really wanted to be home. And it was at least another hour and a half, 2 hours before we got home. So she said, because she was a bit of a shaman, she said, well, what we can do, we can imagine ourselves driving and getting to the last roundabout just as we turn off to where we lived. And so we thought, okay, so we sat and meditated at the top of this slip road, right? It was going to go onto the motorway, thinking of the other end, you know, where we're going to come off the motorway. And so we did that, and then we did the meditation, and we started to drive down the slip road, and the car overheated. No, we were just sitting there anyway, you know, but then the car overheated, and the temperature gauge went up like that, off the scale. There's all smoke coming out the engine, and it took us about an extra 2 or 3 hours to get home, because we'd actually broken down at this point.
Wow.
But there was a slow motion thing. As we came down the slip road, it all went into slow-mo. Like that, and steam coming out like that. Then we came back to reality.
Oh, interesting.
So whatever we'd done
had affected the physical nature of the car.
Yes, exactly. And we didn't make it home. In fact, it took us twice as long.
Oh, wow.
But we did have the experience of it all going slow. You know, it's a great experience.
It's quite interesting, this aspect of how much of our reality do we create ourselves?
Well, you know, what is reality? That's the question.
I think we addressed that in the earlier episode, didn't we? Yeah, a bit.
Yeah, do you know, I think with the experiences that I've had, I'm not sure that I think this reality might actually be some sort of simulation. I don't think it's a computer simulation. When I went over to LA a little while ago, I was invited over there to help some engineers and scientists with my dowsing skills, all right? Because they were working on a project to prove consciousness. They were trying to build a model, a scientific model to prove consciousness, which was pretty amazing in itself that anybody would attempt to do that. And they've been trying this for 5 years, all right? And they've got so far with it, you know. And so they were proper scientists, you know, highly paid scientists that were there just to build a model of consciousness, or 6 of them. And we're all together living in the same place and just outside LA, right up on the top of the hill.
So a think tank, a day-to-day think tank.
Not really. It was funded by somebody who intuitively was told that they should try and build a model for consciousness.
Interesting.
So they were passionate about this. And so they researched various different scientists from different countries, and put them up in this nice house on the top of up on the hills of LA, up there, just outside town.
Yeah.
And so we stayed there in this compound, as it were, electric gates and all that sort of thing, compound. And anyway, in the evenings, because everybody was living on site or nearby, we were eating together. And I didn't really know them at this point. This is like day one, you know, of me being there. And of course, I come from a point of view of, come from a background of engineering for sure, but I also had this mischievous, magical thing that I was going to throw into the mix. So I said, so what do you think about, all this being some sort of simulation? And the whole room burst into activity. And I thought, oh, crap, they're going to crucify me with this, you know. They said, no, there's enough evidence to say that it is probably not a simulation, but it's a neural simulation, because computers being a simulation, you know, computers running a simulation, they wouldn't be able to cope with all the rendering. Right. But a neural simulation, a neural network type of simulation was absolutely possible. So they started talking about it, and it was like, wow, they've obviously been thinking about this.
Interesting.
Because this scientist said this scientist said this, the statistics are this, and they're bringing on all this data that they've been obviously researching upon themselves, just bringing it all into the mix, and it was awesome, to be fair, it was awesome. So I'm not sure myself. I have the intuition that it's, you know, we are actually living in some sort of reality, which is we call it a simulation. It's easier to use that word. Some sort of simulation where we are playing these different roles in this simulation. So that's why I said earlier on that it was not really a game, but we were parts of a play in this simulation. And given my experience of going off the timeline and seeing this unrendered stuff, I have to think that there must be, it feels like there's some truth in that. So
your compatriot, William Shakespeare, got it right. Life is but a stage.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting, yeah. I mean, there's often talk about, it's just a game. get over it. It's just a game. Just do the things, follow the rules in the game, and you'll get through the other side, sort of thing. I'm sure most people don't think it's a game, but that's what we're told sometimes.
I think we're here creating a new game, actually. We're working on the creation of a new game world with the technology that you're designing. You're creating a different set of circumstances to navigate this game world.
That may be true, but I think it's still within the rules. See, it's not. I don't think it's not like we've hacked the outside rules and snuck. Look at the game book or the rules and found a loophole like a backdoor password or something. I don't think we've done that. But I think we're working within the limitations of how we're evolving as conscious beings. The more consciousness that we can be aware of, the more we become aware, we realise actually, we can do all sorts of different things, because I think we have this enormous. Each person has this enormous ability to be creative, and it's only the day-to-day stuff, the fear of not having enough money to do this, the fear of paying the mortgage, the fear of this, of people having 2 or 3 jobs. We're being kept busy.
Right.
But if we weren't being kept busy, I think people would have the time to explore more of their spirituality, and certainly be more creative.
This is an interesting point. Now we're living a very particular moment in history where there is a virus, the coronavirus, that has in fact stopped humanity. So there's the pause button has in many ways been hit right now. So I think it will be interesting to see what emerges out of that when people have the opportunity to spend some time with themselves.
Yeah, that may well be the case. Apart from the forthcoming baby boom in about 9 months,
right? Yeah.
When that's all done and dusted, and they got nothing else to do, then they may well look within. Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you again for another fascinating conversation, and thank you for joining us for this conversation. And we'll conclude right there.
Thank you very much.